OMG. And today we're gonna talk about why are straight women so obsessed with heated rivalry? Because I've been searching for this answer for a while now, and I wanted to wait a little bit to see if this is as big as I think it is, because I thought it was just something that's in my bubble, because I've always been attracted to these kinds of narratives since I was a teenager. Um, this is not my first rodeo, okay? I was a Larry in the Tumblr era. I used to believe that Harry Styles and Louis Tomlinson were together secretly. I truly believe that. And because I used to follow that Tumblr side of things, I got introduced to a lot more gay narratives like Scam season 3 and Queer as Folk, and later in like 2017 I read Call Me By Your Name and I watched the movie and I was obsessed with it. And now 2025, the end of 2025 comes around, and I hear about this show, Heated Rivalry, and I watch it. I read the book, and I feel like I'm a teenager again. And now that I have the emotional maturity and depth and the resources to look into why I have always been attracted to these kinds of narratives instead of just normal romance, which I personally hate, and why so many women now are obsessed with the show. Yeah, so we're gonna get into it, and I'm very excited because I feel like I finally understand why I'm the way that I am. One big thing, and the main thing, is a phrase that I heard on TikTok. Is that with the TV show, we get to experience love and sex without gender. And I do not believe that that's like to the T, because they're both men, they're not non-binary people. But for us, is just removing the female protagonist and role. So there's no performance. There's no female role that it's so deeply engraved, and we have to follow such strict lines and tropes and expectations. So in the show, we get freed of that, and we just get to enjoy two people falling in love. How crazy is that? That's why it's so beautiful, because usually when we have a man and a woman, the woman is usually doing all of the emotional labor. But when we have two men, it took 10 years in this case, but someone has to talk, someone has to communicate, someone has to be emotionally vulnerable, and normally that falls onto the woman, which comes to my other point that I realized, is that I unfortunately like men. And through the show, I get to experience men falling in love and being vulnerable and being masculine in a safe way. They're very comfortable, just not very comfortable. They still are afraid of a lot of things, but they're comfortable with each other. I get to see what it would be like to have an emotional, not they're not emotionally intelligent actually, but at some point they are. At some point they get there, and it's just nice to watch that. It's nice to watch men being emotionally vulnerable, and we don't usually get to see that. With also being like removed from the equation, since we don't have a woman protagonist, we get to identify. And like I said before, usually when we have a woman, we have very strict we have a very strict role to follow there. We're submissive, we're feminine, we're all of that, and it's so boring. But when we don't have the woman protagonist, we get to identify with both. We get to identify with Ilya, which is more dominant, which is more. I'm remembering Ilya. He's more dominant, he's the top, he's all of that. And then Orshane, which is more shy, which has a bit of the tism, you know? He's more closed off and he's more. Ugh. We get. And he's the bottom and he's the sub. And we get to identify with either one of those. We get to explore sexuality in a way that's not like restrictive as it usually is in a normal heteronormative boring ass movie or TV show, in my opinion. Right, I keep saying in my opinion. Obviously it's my opinion. It's my video. But yeah, also I guess I should explain a little bit about the whole heated rivalry thing. It's based on a book, two books. So the first season that we get right now, we only have the first season when I'm recording this, which touches on two books written by Rachel Reed. She wrote a whole series called Game Changers, and this first season it touches on heated rivalry, which is the story of Shane and Ilya, which are arch rivals in the two biggest hockey teams, and they're the best players, so they're like really, really, really like arch rivals. And then there's Game Changers, which goes into the story of the first hockey player to come out as gay. And the TV show is directed by Jacob Tierney, which is a gay man. And I think the show really only works the way that it does because the story was written by a woman. So we get to see like the female gaze and the emotional vulnerability and all of that. Also, we get to see the reality coming from a gay director, which he knows the reality of being a gay man. And it just, everything, like, it had to be like that for it to be so real and beautiful the way that it is. And also, we can get into the casting of these two. It's not just one actor that is amazing and makes the show. It's the two of them. They're perfect in their roles. In those roles, like we have Connor Story, which is a Texan man that he does a perfect Russian accent and just like talking. He talks Russian perfectly. So much so that the Russian cast thought that he was Russian or had like Russian parents and grew up in America, whatever. I have been a lot around. I have been around Russians, and the two things that I think are amazing, little things that I saw, that if you know Russian people, you know, if you know Russian people, you know that he like a Russian, and I think that's amazing. If you know, you know, the faces that he does, the noises that he does, all of that is very Russian. I think he had to watch a lot of Russian to be able to do what he does. No one's talking about that. And also another thing that I picked up is the fact that like we from like Europe and America, we do 1, 2 like this with our fingers, but Russians and like Eastern Europeans, they do like this. And when he's talking about the tuna melts, he does 1 and 2 like this. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my god, that is so Russian of you. How do you know that? And also, not only Connor, we have Hudson playing Shane, which if you watch his other stuff, like I watch, guys, I watch every single interview and every single short movie that they have ever done. And if you see the range of emotion and all of that Hudson can do, only then you can realize how much he was restricted into the body language and the communication of Shane. Because Shane, I don't know if you know, but he has a bit of autism. It's not explicitly said, neither on the books or in the TV show, but he does have a little bit of autism. So he has to be a little bit restricted and like very direct and see everything very literal, you know, literally. And he does that like perfectly. And you can see that contrast, how much he did when you see the other stuff that he acted on. But yeah, I think the acting is amazing. It's another reason why we're so drawn to the TV show. It's the acting, it's the directing, it's the just the photography, how it is filmed. All of these artistic choices lead to just a beautiful story that we want to watch and rewatch and keep rewatching forever, you know? So, yeah, I want to hear your guys' opinion, and if you have anything else that you can think on why straight women would be so attracted to the story, because this is what I could come up with, you know, on my own. And I need more minds, you know. Another thing that I think I need to touch on is that this is not about fetishization. How do you say that? Fetishization? Because that comes from a place of where the fantasy is more important than the human part of things. And I think what I'm talking about that makes us so attracted to this is the complete opposite. We are not attracted. This is not just two men kissing. This is two men falling in love. This is two people played so well that we feel like we know these characters. You know, they're human beings falling in love. This is why we love it, you know? And I think it's very important too that we as people that enjoy the show practice like real allyship towards just the queer community, because to this day, as the show is getting so huge and getting picked up by like hockey podcasters, I watched the Empty Netters reviewing it, and we still to this day do not have a hockey player that came out. So queer people still face so much discrimination and erasure and all of that. Just violence, you know. We have to practice allyship for the queer community, because this is representation, but it's still not reality. We have this TV show that is huge portraying two gay hockey players, but it's not reality, you know. We do not have a gay hockey player that came out. So yeah, and I also can relate, because in my mind I cannot separate like homophobia from just misogyny, because what is really hated in a gay man is their femininity, what we call femininity, you know. The fear and the hate isn't towards the queerness alone. It's not the fear that a man is in love with a man. It is like the softness, the emotional openness, and the traits that are culturally coded as female. So in the world where like the masculinity is power, being associated with womanhood is seen as the biggest failure, you know. So I don't know, that's why I feel like I can relate so much to just the homophobia that they go through, you know, and the fear that they have of like coming out.